The sikha we will be learning tonight is in look at the Sichas Chelik Chof, the third sikha for Parshas Noach. The Noach, the main story that the Torah talks about is the story of the Mabel. So the Rebbe says in Posik, Vayisker Elokim es Noach tzekol achaya gomer. In the Posik where the Torah says that Hashem remembered Noach and the animals, etc., etc. This was after the water stopped, and the Eibishter remembered him, and then that's brought towards the end of that there should be able to go out of the teva, and the Mabel was over, etc., etc. So on this Posik, where it says that Elikim, which is Hashem, remembered Noach and everything, all the animals that are in the teva, Shtelzich Rasha, Vayisker Elikim, so Rasha brings down from the Posik the words Vayisker Elikim, that Hashem remembered, but he uses word Elikim, and he's Mafarash, this is what the Rasha explains. Zeh Hashem Midas Adinhu. This name is Midas Adin. We know that by Hashem, there are a lot of names, and different names represent different midas, different attributes of Hashem. Elikim represents din, judgment, strictness. Shem Havaya Yudke Vovke, that represents Rachamim, Hashem's mercy. And the other names also represent different midas of Hashem. So Rasha says that the Shem Elikim represents the midas Hadin. And midas Hadin means when it's something negative, something that Hashem is judging. Here, Hashem remembered him, and this was for the good side. This was for a positive thing. He remembered him to protect him, to save him, to get him out of the Mabel and of the table. So Rashi says this name is Midas Adin, Midas Arachamim. But it got changed over. Here it's used for Rachamim. Hashem had pity, and he remembered them, and then he brought to the end of the Mabel. So here it says Midas, the Shem, which is Midas Adin, and it was changed over to Rachamim al the Tfilas HaTzadikim. Through the Tfilas, through the prayers of the Tzadikim, Hashem, they changed over that Midas Hadin behaved in the form of Rachamim. So that's why here it says Vayisker Elikim. Even though this is a union of Rachamim that Hashem had, it says Shem Elikim. And then Rashi adds, the same thing is the opposite. That the evil of the evil people, the Rishoyim, could change the Midas Rachamim, could change the Hashem's Midah of mercy to Midas Adin, to judgment. Like it says, Vayar Hashem, Hirabaros, at the end of Parsha Breshis, it says Hashem's son. Here it says Hashem's name, Shem Havaya. Hashem saw that the people are bad, etc., etc. Vayemen Hashem, and Hashem, which means Havaya, said, Emche, I am going to erase the people. And Hushai Midas Rachmim. Havaya is Midas Rachmim. And there it was used for judgment. So the same thing over there, but in the opposite direction. That the name which is usually Rachmim was changed over to Din because of the Rishoyim, which is the same thing as here. In the good to hear that Midas Adin was changed over to Rachmim because of the Tzadikim. But the Rebbe is going to ask a shaila in a posik, and that posik that Rashi just quoted. Vayar Hashem, Vayar Havaya Kerabaro Sodom. That Havaya Hashem saw that the people are bad. Vayemer Havaya, Eivish said, Emcha, I'm going to erase them, etc., etc. You have the same problem like in our posik. The same problem we have in our posik that it says a name concerning something which doesn't fit to the midah. The same shaila is over there. Adarei von Hogi Vesretzich in posik is the Chura Nid Behesem to the Mushem Midah Vashtei dabei. That the name of Hashem that's used in that posik, where it talks about Hashem seeing that the people are bad and they decided to bring a mabel, doesn't fit to the name of Hashem. The name of Hashem is a midah that doesn't fit to what the posik is talking about. By Vayemer Emche, Vayemer Gemer Emche, Hashem said, I will destroy, which is Aninya from Din Gvura, which is judgment and strictness. Shtei the Shem Havaya, there is a Shem Havaya, which is Shem Midas Rachmim, the name of Midas Rachmim. Vayisker, and in our posik that we're discussing in Parsha where it says Hashem remembered, there it says Elikim, Shem Midas Adin. So just like by us, there is a prayer, Rasha has a kasha. If it's talking about something that's good, why does it use Shem Elikim? The same kasha is in the earlier posik. But he's talking about something that's not good, why does he use the Shem of Rachmim? And for deswegen, Rasha dort, and nevertheless, Rasha doesn't ask that question there. We have to understand. Rasha from späteren Posik Pasha Seinu, nicht from Friedrichen Posik Bayar in Pasha Breshis. Why does Rasha ask this question? It comes to answer this question on our Posik, which is later when he could have asked the same question earlier. Because usually, if you have one question and it could go on an earlier pasuk, and the same question go on a later pasuk, it belongs on the earlier pasuk. The first time this happens, you ask the question. Nochmal, the question is even more. Dafke dovi pirushe, vayisker elekim, bavornt erst rashe, eich der mufte in der Friede, psukim v'yar, v'gemer. In our pasuk, Rashi even actually goes back to that pasuk. And in our pasuk, Rashi comes to tell us that when it says in that pasuk, when Hashem said he's going to bring the Mabul, so Rashi here explains, as Midas Arachmim is Nepa Giborn Midas Adin. That Midas Arachmim, which is the Shem Havai, was changed to Midas Adin. So why didn't Rashi say it over there? Why did Rashi say it over here? So there's a double question. One question is, why doesn't he ask the question of there? And the second thing is that we see that's a question. And V'horaya, Rashi does mention it here. So that makes the kasha even stronger. If Rashi himself says here that its name was changed from Midas Drachman to Midas Adin over there, why doesn't Rashi say it over there? But from them Gufa is Muchas, from that we prove. Adot el-Asar is Nitokan Hechrach from Posik of them Pirish. And in that Posik, when you learn that Posik, you don't have to learn that Pshat. On Tafke from Posik Vayiskel Lekim, but only from our Posik Vayiskel is Do Azash Tarke Choch in the Pirushe. It's from our Posik. After we know Pshat in our Posik, then we have such a proof for the Pshat as Midas Adin Napcha Midas Arachmim, that Midas Adin changed Rachmim is such a strong proof. Bizados is Bolalama, they have the Friedrich and Pasukim, Bayar, Bayemer, as I've dort meant as the Midas Rachmim is not Midas Adin. That only after we learn our Posik. And in our Posik, we have no choice but to learn the Pshat that Midas Adin changed to Midas Rachmim. Now we prove it so much that now we understand that the previous Posik also means the same idea that Midas Rachmim was changed to be the Sadin. But the question was the Pshat. Why? But we must say that when we learn that pasuk, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So Rashi doesn't say it. After we learn this pasuk, now we go back and we say, now we understand that the pasuk is there too. We can't eat entfern. You can't say that as bizim pasuk vayisker lekim veis menit and derech hapshat Hashem avay is midas rachmim Hashem lekim midas adin. Because maybe we could say that till now, till the pasuk in our parsha vayisker, we don't even know that Shem lekim is din and Shem avay is rachmim. But Mele Rashi couldn't say it over there. And just in our pasuk, we find that out, and that's why Rashi says it here. When he says Mashma Chuyel from Rosh and Rashi, from the Lashon of Rashi, seems that that's the pshat. That till now we didn't know that because Rashi says Zeh Hashem Midas Adin. First Rashi starts up after, and he brings the quote Vayisker Elikim. He starts telling us a fact. This name is Midas Adin, and then when he brings the other pasuk, he says Shem Avaye Ushem Midas Rachmim. A signature chidush was Rashi learned from the pasuk. It seems like it's something new that we first find out in this pasuk that Lekim is din and Shem Havai is rachmim. You can't say that's the pshat. First of all, this we have to understand. You can't say that here we find out. How do we find out here? Mary from the Friedrich of Psukim V'yar Hashem V'yemer Havaya. According to this pshat, till now we didn't know that Shem Lekim is din and Shem Havai is rachmim. Here we found out. How do we find it out? How does this pasuk show what the Shemas are? So you can't say that Rashi waited till here because till now we didn't know and now we know. How do we know now? But is it Eid V'ike? Main thing is a different question. Gleich in Ascholas HaTorah, a Breishis Bore Lekim, beginning in the Torah where it says Breishis Bore Lekim, Rashi already said then the first pasuk of the Torah of Breishis spoke about the Shemas. So we know what Shemas are. Rashi says like this: why does it say Breishis Bora Lekim? It doesn't say Bora Havaya. Because first the Eibishter thought to create the world using judgment, being very strict. But then he saw etc. Rashi says that the world won't exist if he's going to go with judgment. So what did he do? So he made Midas Rachmim come first. And what did he do? And Rashi adds the shotfa the Midas Adin, and he connected it to Midas Adin. Tiksiv, where do we see that he also had Midas Harachamim, and actually Midas Harachim was first? Tiksiv, so Rashi quotes the pasuk, B'yayim haseis Havaya Lekim. The other pasuk says the day that Havaya Lekim made. So there we see Havaya is also mentioned, and Havaya is Racham, and it's mentioned even before Lekim. So we see already from there that Rashi over there assumes that everyone knows that Lekim is Din, and Havaya is Rachmim. So we can't say Rasha, till now we didn't know it. That's what Rasha says it first here. So we're back to the kasha. Why does Rasha not say anything on the posik where it says Vayar Havaya Kerabaroso, the Vayemer Havaya Emche, to explain over there that even though it's a concept of din, but the Rishoyim change the inyan from the Midas Arachim to din, and therefore, even though it's a case of din, he uses the name of Rachmim. Now, why doesn't Rashi say it over there? So he says, first we'll understand, let's go back to the Rashi that in the beginning of Bereshis, Rashi and the Posik Boro Elikim, what Rashi said. And this is what Rashi says. And here the Rebbe quotes the whole Rashi. But Ra, the Eibishter wanted to create the world with Midas Adin. Ra, Sheinu Elam Eskayim, so the world will not exist that way. Vehigdim Midas Rachmim, so therefore he first put Midas Rachmim there, a shotfa, and he combined it with Midas Adin. That's why later on it says, V'yema says Havaya Elikim. But Losh Rash vehigdim Midas Rachmim is muchvan. Rashi says that the Eibishter made Midas Rachmim first. Is clear. That not only the Eibishter combined Midas Rachmim together with Midas Adin, that the world should be run by both Midas in a equal partnership. So this both Midas will run. Shall run the world with Midas Adin and Midas Rachmim. From Rashi's Loshen is not mashma like that. Nor to Midas Adin, Midas Rachmim when he decided to put in Rachmim, he not only added Rachmim also, he made Rachmim first. He decided in Posek, like we see in that second Posek that Rasha brings, it says, B'yem haseis Havaya und enoch Elikim. B'yem haseis Havaya, first Havaya, and then Elikim, obviously, he made it Havaya, which is Midas Rachmim comes first. Und das meint, that means, as Midas Rachmim is the Rikah, that means that the Peil Mamish, first he wanted to create the world, run the world with midas, only with judgment, to strictness, and he said it's not going to work. So he made that midas rachmim is first. The main midah that Hashem uses to look to run the world is midas rachmim. The says it means like this. In simple words, Shas die Welt is in a matzah was es wächst sich. The world is in a situation that it's being weighed. See the anhoges is I'm with midas rachmim, but with misadin. Whether David's behavior should be with the midah of pity, mercy, or should be with midas with judgment. Is midas rachmim kedemis. Midas Rachmim is first. So B'meila Midas Rachmim wins. Midas Rachmim is the one that's a deciding factor because that comes first. That's what comes out from Rashi. Al Kaponim is movement. So in any case, it comes out as als what tut sich in Welt muss sein der Psak from Midas Adin. Anything that happened in the world has to be according to the decision and the Psak Din we call him, the ruling of Midas Rachmim. How could you say that everything goes with Rachmim? We know there are things in the world which are not Rachmim. There are punishments. So the Rebbe says, even the punishments of above, it can't happen without the agreement of Midas Rachmim. If it's possible to have Midas Adin only without even having the agreement of Midas Rachmim, that us wieder der Fear we'll come back to a level that the world can't exist. The world can't exist just with din. So there could be a case where it's just din, can be. So there must be that everything has chesed, rachmim in it also. Midas Adin muss sein. You have to have Midas Adin. The short for the Midas Adin, that's what Rashi says he put Midas Rachmim together with Midas Adin. For Vibaldas di Matorah for Bria Seilem is, Rashi is Mafarish. This is the purpose of the creation of the world. It's like Rashi says, Bishvil HaTorah, the creation came because of the Torah. Was main bepasha, it means simply, and not nor as is do a Torah. It doesn't mean that should be a Torah. Nor as Eden, Bishvil Yisrael, so learn a Torah, Mekayim Zayin Mitzvahs. The world was created, it says because of Torah and because of Eden. Created the world to give a Torah, so there should be Eden who should learn Torah and do the mitzvahs. Mutter Zayin Adin. So there has to be judgment. Schar v'endish, there has to be reward, has to be punishment. So for sicher, as Eden will learn a Torah, was das geht felt is chusakiyim, to make sure that Eden will learn Torah, and that gives the world the right to exist. So there has to be midas adin. Aber von deswegen ist still kadei der Elam soll haben akim, but in order for the world to exist properly, muss sein midas rachmim. You can't just have din, you have to have rachmim v'adar, aber beifnas is the rikir machrim. This is even more. The Eibishter made it so that not only that you must have rachmim, the rachmim must come first. That means that everything depends on Midas Rachmim. And even when there's a judgment, Midas Rachmim has to agree to that judgment. Otherwise, It's not kedime. That means that you can't have din itself, and it must be with rachmim, and rachmim came first. Aber das ist wahrscheinlich gepasst, für was Rashi stellt sich mit dem, was der Postek sagt im Breishes, bei Yar Havaye, bei Yemer Havaye Emche, und nicht Elokim. Now we'll understand why Rashi, on the first Postek in Parsha Breishes, where it says that Havaye saw, the Eibush saw using the Shem Havaye, that the people are bad, and Hashem Havaye said that he's going to destroy the world. So Rashi should have asked, as we said before, since he's talking about destroying, he should have used the Shem Elokim. Why does the Shem Havaye? Now we'll understand why in that, learning that pasuk, before we come to our pasuk, we don't have to learn that. This was a change, that really this happened, that Midas Harachim changed to Midas Adin. Why? The Baldas Higdim Midas Harachim and Midas Adin. Since Midas Harachim came, always is before Midas Adin, in every situation. When the ancient Delmaila kennen it kommen under Achrof Midas Harachim canal, and even when the Eibush punishes from above, it can't come without the decision making of Rachmim also, as we said before. They're far dar the posek nutzen thereby the shame, thereby them shame midas Rachmim. So we can learn that's why Hashem uses the shame of midas Rachmim. When it comes to the punishment of the Mabul, David just saw the bad things that happened, punishment of the Mabul. Rachmim had to be involved, because Rachmim is involved in everything. From Eibes vol gestanden vayar Elokim, vayemer Elokim emche, if it would just say Hashem saw, Elokim saw, and Elokim said, I will destroy. Well, geworden not me, we'd have a problem. We have a question. Wie kann sein, dass Midas Hadin Elokim allein soll sein die Achlote und Anhoge von Emche? How could it be that Midas Hadin should decide to destroy the world? Wo is der Higdi Midas Rachmim v'shit for the Midas Hadin? Where is this Rachmim that Hashem made before Din? So Rachmim has a say here too. And here, if it would say just Elokim saw it bad and Elokim decided to destroy the world, we would say, well, it's only Midas Hadin. But it doesn't fit to what Rashi himself said, that Higdim, Deibishter made, that every din has Rachmim with it. The far mus der Posek bavoren and as Afalpi as the din bepeil, die kommen from this Adin Elokim. The Posek has to tell us that even though actually bepeil, the punishment came from Midas Adin, is Vayemer Havaye Emche. Havaye, which is Midas Rachmim, said, I will destroy. The Achro, Psak of Emche is gekommen from Havaye Midas Rachmim. The decision and the Psak Din of destroying had to come from Midas Rachmim. Midas Rachmim has to be part of it. But even though the actual punishment, the actual destruction of the world came from Midas Hadin, so we could still ask, how does the Pasuk say that Havaya said? That Havaya said to destroy, if it came from Midas Hadin. So nevertheless, and the question is, so why did it say Havaya? So the Rebbe says, you can't answer, and you could have answered that question. Ados is a mikro kotzer. Rashi says a few places, Rashi already said it before, but sometimes the Pasuk is short, which means sometimes the Pasuk says, and he did it, and it doesn't say who. Usually when you say he did, you have to say who. So in a case where Rashi says that people will understand themselves, well, who did it, the Pasuk is makatzer. So the same thing here also. You could say that when the Pasuk says that Havaya said, if it would say Havaya said, I will destroy, the question was, why doesn't it say, again, let's repeat this again. The pilot came to Shem Elokim. How does the Pasuk say Havaya said, Emche, I will destroy? But you can answer that kasha. The reason is, because it's mikrokotz, und es ist kile wie es wohl gestanden, bei jemer Havaya Emche durch Haskomen zu Shem Elokim Midas Hadin. In other words, the question is, why does it say by jemer Havaya Emche? So we could answer why, because it had to come from Havaya, because Havaya is before Shem Elokim. Anything that happens has to be from Havaya. It came from Shem Elokim. So it's a short posik. It's like as if it would say, Havaya said I will destroy through Shem Elokim. Just like some psukim, it says, he did this and doesn't say who. Here also, it's Shem Elokim did it, which is Midas Hadin. So you could learn Pshat in the posik that Midas Hadin destroyed. But it had to have the Haskoma Midas Rach. That's why the posik says, Vayar Havaya kerabaros odem, vayemer Havaya emche. And the taka means Midas Rachmim. And he said, I will destroy through Midas Hadin. And that happens sometimes in the psukim. So we don't have to learn, when we learn that pasuk, we don't have to learn that the pasuk is saying that Midas Rachmim changed to Midas Hadin. Midas Rachmim, Havaya means Midas Rachmim, and Midas Rachmim, Elamai, Midas Rachmim agreed that in this case, Midas Adin should destroy. Das ist Tage nicht als ein glatter Pirich, it's not just a simple pshat, aber das ist als glatter, wie es Mefarish sein. You could have learned, like, it's not a simple pshat to say that's what the posuk means, but it's simpler and more smooth than to explain as Vayemer Havaya Emcha meant, and to say that Havaya said, I will destroy, means that der Din bepeil gekommen mit des Rachmim Havaya. We're saying that the Rashi says in our posuk, going back to that posuk, that Havaya Taka destroyed. It's hard to say that Havaya destroyed, which means Rachmim destroyed, but it is in ganz nicht mistaber. It doesn't really make sense. We fraten derech abshat, certainly simple pshat, as a benodom soll durch meise but philosophic and happened with this Shal Baruch. How can we learn that a human being, through his behavior, at his tefillah, should change the midah of Hashem? So to say, learning the pshat that Havaya midas Rachmim changed to midas Adin, and that's why it destroyed, because it changed to midas Adin. How did it change? Because of what the people did. It's hard to say that. So that's hard to say. You can understand that the person through davening, through tshuva, could bring out, awaken pity by Hashem, mercy, or they didn't say, or something the opposite, as I don't know, if a person behaves in a bad way, can gain him as midas rachmim zum asken sein, as ihm kumt nedish. It's possible that midas rachmim should agree that this guy is supposed to be punished. But who's going to be the actual one to punish? Will be midas adin. So that we understand could happen. It's not simple to say. Midas rachmim gufe soll es hapich werden. Und durch Abenoden bis reinlegen sich zu der Vierten in English. To say the pshat the way Pale say later, that midas adin, midas rachmim changed to midas adin. That's very hard to say. So we have a choice of two psukim. We learned that plus we have a choice of two pirushim. One pirush could be that the reason it says there that Havaya is going to bring the mabul because it changed Vaya's rachmim, but midas rachmim changed to midas adin. Or you could say it means something else. Midas rachmim agree that midas adin should do it. So that's what the pasuk says, midas rachmim, because everything comes from rachmim. So it's not just a simple pshat, but it's a better pshat seemingly than the pshat to say that actually the midah of the Eibush that changed. So therefore, if we learn that pasuk, there's no need to say that the reason it says Shem Havaya said, I will destroy the people, is not, we don't have to say that midas din changed the midas rachmim, means change the din. That it's Havaya means rachmim, and it changed to punish. You don't have to say that. We can say it means that midas rachmim agreed that midas adin should punish, and that's why it says the word Havaya by the Mabul. But there, but this pshat in saying that this is the meaning of Havaya said, I will destroy. And the midas rachmot masking given as a darb sein emche that really midas adin, midas rachmim didn't change the din. Midas adin is punishing, but midas rachmim agreed. Can no maskim sein when it's let's wegen Shem Havaya midas rachmim. That could only be true if we're talking about the Shem Havaya midas rachmim. Then you could say that that's why it says Havaya because he was maskim, but really midas adin did it, but Havaya was maskim. Because was higdim midas rachmim, Eibishter made that midas rachmim came first. Was he is the rikir machriya, and that's the one that decides that everything that happens in the world. So there you could say that's why even though it was din, it was punishment, but the pasuk could use the Shem Havaya because Havaya had to agree. You could learn that. Und der Riber kemen zu ihm Yachazain afil apul von din. That's why we could use the Shem Havaya and relate to it even when it's a punishment thing because Havaya had to agree. On the other hand, in our posik, when it says Hashem remembered Noach, which is a behavior of rachamim, of mercy, bleibt schwer. Here is the question: how does it fit to say that the Elokim remembered? See, over there we have a reason to say that even if midas rachamim did not change the din, but we write midas rachamim in such a place because that had to come first. Midas adin doesn't come first. So in our posuk, you can't give that answer. That there, it says Vayisk Hashem remembered, which is Ayin of Rachmim, and it says Hashem Elokim. Why would it say Shem Elokim? Why would it use Shem? There's no reason to say Shem Elokim. Over there, there's a reason to say Shem Havaya, even though it came through Din. And don't have to say that Shem Havaya changed to Midas Din. Shem Havaya is Rachmim. The Rachmim agreed. But here, there's no reason. We can't say that Midas Din is maskim to the Midas Rachamim. There's no reason to say that. Why would you have to say that? By over there, since we said before, Midas Rachamim is the one that comes first, so you have to have his Askoma. So the Pasuk could say that. But here you don't have to have the Askoma. So why does it say? Even if you want to say that here was something new, something extra happened. That not only Midas Rachamim was stronger than Midas Adin. You could say that Midas Adin agreed to Havaya. You could say, maybe you could say, like we said before, like we said before, that Vayemer Havaya Emchet means that it really happened to Midas Adin. You could say Pshat, Midas Havaya, which is Rachamim agreed. Maybe you could say that here too. But I explained already that it's hard to say. Here the Rebbe explained. I explained it before, but here the Rebbe puts it in words. But to say only by Yisker Elikim to Mayachazain the Schira Gufa Blaze Elikim Shemit Sadin. To say that they remember just Midas Adin. To say just Midas Adin. Even if you say Midas Adin was maskim. Over there, when we say by Midas Rachamim, so you could learn Pshat Midas Rachamim was maskim. That's why it says Havaya. And it comes through Din. So they because Shamavaya is the main one that has to give the psak, but Midas Adin doesn't have to give the psak. So why would they only write Midas Adin? If you say Midas Rachman is maskim, could be Midas Rachman is maskim, but why would it not mention Midas Rachman? Why does it only mention Midas Adin? Why? What's the mile of just mentioning Midas Adin? So that's why here in Vayisker Rashi has to tell us something new. Yes, the fact that they should remember when he did something good came from Midas Adin itself. Not only Midas Adin agreed that Hashem should remember and do something of Rachamim. Midas Adin itself was changed to Midas Rachamim, and that's the reason why the Torah says Vayisker Elikim remembered, because Elikim, which is Din, Istak did a good thing. Now, know them when he's Mechadesh. As he's Doa Metzia says, many Odem can them happen as Midas Shalach Kodesh Baruch Hu. So in our posting, there's no other choice how to learn. How could a person? We said before, it's hard to say that a person could change Hashem's midas. But nevertheless, we have no choice. That's what the pasuk says. It's clear in the pasuk that that's what it is, because there's no other pshat that we could learn. So here we see clearly that you could have people change the midah of the Eibishter. Is mistaba. Now that we say that that's the pshat here and that's possible, so it makes sense. As if the pasuk v'yemer Havaya emche is nit kabikra says. We go back to that pasuk where it says Havaya said, "I will destroy the world." So before we said maybe it's a mikra kotz. It means Havaya agreed that Midas Adin should do it. Why would we say that? Nor that Emche is yikumu from Havaya Midas Racham Matzmei. Now when we got that pasuk, yes, that Midas Racham itself also decided to destroy. But the Shos Shiloshoim Hifeches Midas Racham Midas Adin, because the dishes, the evil of the Rishoim could change the midah itself. So before we didn't want to say that pshat when we learned that pasuk, because it's hard to say on our own that people could change the midah of the Eibishter. So we tried to say, even if it's bedechet, we tried to change it, say a different pshat. But when we came to this pasuk, in this pasuk, there's no other pshat to say. So we must say people could change. Oh, so now we go back. I said that makes more sense to say the pshat over there, that midas harachmim changed to midas adin. It's for the tzucha noch beer, but still we need to understand. Why was it important that the tzadikim should daven and midas adin should be changed to midas rachmim? Der Vayisker soll sein von Elikim, so the Eibishter is remembering Noach and helping him now should come from Elikim. Why would it not be enough if Havaya remembered? What we're saying is the pasuk must be telling us that even in Elikim, Midas Adin also did good, changed to Midas Rachmim. Why is that important? And what would be if it would be just Midas Rachmim? Why do we need this? Is there beer in them? So the answer is the Inje from Vayisker gamer, das Noach gamer, is given the Haschole von the Krisus Bris for the Eibishter hat genug gemacht mit Noach. This that Hashem remembered Noach, etc., was the beginning of the covenant that Hashem made with Noach later, saying, that never will be a Mabel again to destroy the world. Was a child given the Afshoris from a Mabel Ba'asid, which excluded, showed that they were never able to be a Mabel. This was the beginning. Even though the Krisus Bris in the 19th Rebbe says, even though the covenant came after he brought the korbanos, etc., Hashem, etc., but it's understood that the Vayisker was the beginning of it. and even brings a proof on the way we say it in the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. There we say from those words seems also that this is the beginning of the Krisus Bris. So since this is the beginning of the bris that Hashem made, that He will never bring a mabul, and if them is nigin nugados anhoget mayiskes as I know from mitzarachmim, for that Krisus Bris that never be a mabul is not enough. It would come just from rachamim. Umidas adin zol nor nit nagazay nor afilim askas. Umidas adin should not fight it, or midas adin should not only not fight it, but even be masked not enough. Weil dann wollte es gemeint, as midas adin mit zadatzma git ja norte from mabul. If we say like this, that it was made by midas harachamim. So looking at it, so what did Midas Adin feel? Midas Adin felt that he should not do this. The good thing, the remembering Noach. That means that for Midas Adin, there is a passage. Elamai, Midas Adin was masking. Agreed. But Be'etzem, it said Midas Adin, there could be a mabul. If the whole thing came only from Yisrachmin, the Farat is Gedar Zayin in the Meifim from Ayisker Elakim, that's why it had to be the Elakim should remember, as Midas Adin Gufe, is happy geworden mit Midas Rachmim. The Midas Adin itself was changed to Midas Rachmim, und das darf geschehen der Fshores of a mabul. Since the Eibusher remembered in order to promise him that there should never be a possibility of a mabul, that means there's no possibility. If Midas Adin is still standing there, and it wasn't changed to Rachmim, so there's still Midas Adin. Elamai didn't oppose, and it let Midas Rachmim save Noach, and it was masking to save, but there is still concept of Midas Adin. So if there's a concept of Midas Adin still existing in this inyan, that means the Krisus Bris is not fully dead. It's not possible to be a mabul. If there's Midas Adin agree, it's still existing, so there's a possibility for a mabul. In order to make a promise that there is no possibility for a mabul, that means there's no Midas Adin anymore. How is that possible? That Midas Adin was changed to Midas Rachmim. That's what happened. Had to happen that way here. The Rebbe says the explanation in the Apixidus, in the Pnimis Inyonim. The posik v'yiskal Elokim es Noach v'gemer. This posik that Hashem remembered Noach when gesagt the Musaf the Rosh Hashanah al Tzeiner und the Reshter from the Psukim Zechreines is mentioned in Musaf Rosh Hashanah when we're supposed to bring Psukim from Malchi Zechrein Shefres, Psukim that speak about Malchus of Hashem, Psukim that speak about Shefres, and Psukim that speak about Zechreines Hashem remembers. And this is one of them, actually the first posik. Is nicht verstanden, it's not understood. Der Teich von alle Psukim Zechreines wegen der Zikoren von dem Bris von der Rebischter gemacht mit ihm. When we look at all the other psukim about Zechreines, talk about Hashem remembering the covenant He made with the Eden. From Choch, and as we say in the davening, Choch as ata zecher ma'aseh and fake it called Yitzuri Kedem. Even though we say to Hashem, you remember with the ma'asim of the whole world, and you remember all creatures. The main remembrance in Rosh is connected to Eden, oder dem Zikoren von Neshamas Yisrael, vertufget und der Zikoren von Kol Yitzuri Kedem. And by remembering the Eden, that makes that Eibush remembers everything else, all the things in the world. But the main thing is for Eden. So if the main thing is for Eden, hein farvos sagt man den Posse bei Yiskal Elokim es Noach, was der Zikoren is negeis, am Kol is dicken Kiyum Eilum noch am Mabel. So why do we mention this Posik as one of the Zechreines, which is negate to Eden, when this is just remembered Noach, that the world should continue. There should be a world, so it's negate to the whole world, not Avkut Eden. Why don't we bring psukim that have to do with the Zikoren of Eden? And in order 24 start, the Rebbe says, and there are many psukim of Zechreines that have to do with Eden. So why don't we bring those psukim? State of them the beer, so in Chassidus it says the beer like this. Ad the Zikoren was given far the Krisus Bris. This is the Eibush that remembered Noach, before he made the covenant later, is given beike nit b'shaychet selim. It wasn't mainly concerning the world. Nor al Noach mitzad atzmei. Hainu mitzad etzemailis in Neshamas Yisrael. Not because of the world, because of Noach. And Noach represents the Neshamas of Eden. And this was the Eibush remembered the Neshamas, mitzad the Neshamas themselves. Whereas the far zokman gambes Noach ba'ava zacharto. That's why we say there that you remembered Noach with love. Was main the ave pnimis v'asmi Neshamas Yisrael. It's the ave, the pnimis dike, and the essential ave that the Eibush has to Eden. Now, at first glance, when we say these words, Noach was not a Yid. So, what do we mean that this is the remembrance of Noach? Is the remembering of Neshamas Yisrael, the essence of Neshamas Yisrael? When Bnei Noach are goyim, and Noach himself was not a Yid. Yidden started from Avram Avinu. So what does it mean that this is the remembrance of Hashem of the Etzem Neshamas Yisrael? So the Rebbe will explain it in a second. But I'm saying it now because right away someone will stop and say, whoa, we're talking about remembering Noach as remembering the Shamas. How does Noach do the Shamas? So the Rebbe will ask a question and come to explain this. As for the Tzichober Biur, the Rebbe asked the question, not what I just asked, but a similar question. We need to know, right after the words that you remembered Noach with Ave, is memamshich u'mezokt, and we continue. This is what we say in Shemon Esrei, in Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. Vativ Kideu, B'Kedar Yeshua v'Rachmim, and you remembered him to help and have pity. At the time when you brought the Mabul, Al Kain Zichreine Bola Fanecha, and therefore the remembrance of him came to you. What das meint that the Zikorin is Kedei Zazayin the Krisis Bris of Kiyum Elom. So from the words it says, you remembered when you brought a Mabul, and what did Mabul do? Mabul destroyed the world, and now you remembered him. Because Al-Kay means you remembered to help when you brought a Mabul, so you remembered him for what? The Mabul destroyed the world. You remember him to rebuild the world. So it's negated to the world. So how do we say that this has to do with remembering the Neshamas Yisrael? Which is similar to the question I asked before. How is Noach going to do Neshamas Yisrael? So the Rebbe is the Asbara, is that the Pshat is like this. The Krisas bris mit Noach and Afkiyim Eilom, when Hashem made the covenant with Noach, to the world should continue existing, is nicht stam auf Versicherung developed with Hom Akiyum. It's not just a promise that the world will exist, und nicht chore werden noch einmal durch Hamabel, will not be destroyed again through Hamabel. Nor as der Elam soll sein behesem zu der Kavanah betachlis briosa, that the world will continue existing, fitting to the purpose of why it was created. Now, why was the world created? The Balda die Welt is beschaffen geworden b'shvil Yisrael, and since the world was created because of the Eden, is moving at the Christus Bris is verbunden mit dem Zekorin, shekodme vevi al neich mitzadatzim, it's at Milas and Shomas Yisrael. So from that we understand that the Christus Bris the Eibishter made, which started with remembering Noach, is in the Geya Noach himself, which was from him came out the Eden, that it should be according to the Eden. So remembering is not, it's remembering that the world will continue, but not the world will continue. The Yiddishkeit of the world will continue. The world will continue through the Eden. And so we remember Noach is not, the Tachlis is not the world als world, but the Tachlis is als the Shomas Yisrael. And this is what the sinion of, this was by Yisrael, Lakimis Noach, is in remembering in the Shomas, remembering to make the world, it's a promise for the Kiyum of the world through Eden. Or their union at the Christus reading Noach Mafkim Elam is as the Elam was a Mazai Masim. It's going to be this idea that when Eibishter made a bris with Noach that the world will exist means that the world will exist fitting to the purpose of the creation. Spiegelt sich up in the move of the Christus bris and so that we also reflects in another detail of this covenant. The covenant that was that the world will continue existing and there will be no change. 8 Kol Yemei Yoretz, all the days of the world will be Leish Beis, it will never stop. In other words, by doing this Bris Christus Bris, he brought in saying that the world will be forever. The fact that there will be no change in the nature, as in them is this shows that there is a keach in the nature of the world. He said the nature shall continue forever. Now it seems like a contradiction. Nature is limited. Forever is not limited. So Aaron says akeach sof. So what does it mean that anhogas hanteva will be without a change? So he says like this. Nature, like all creatures, cannot be eternal. Heder should not have any changes. That's when you're in the teva, there is a godly power which is beyond changes, which is aniyah violation. His David didn't change, so he put into the teva that idea. It comes out of that. Oder teke v'chizuk. Was is reingegeben geworden in der Metzias Salem, the increases breeze, that this strength that was put into the Metzias of the world which is nature, through the Krisis breeze, is nicht an inyan von Helen v'Hester. It's not that it's Helen v'Hester. When you make l'churi, you would say that if you give the world a kiyum forever, the nature, and nature is a cover-up, Elam and Helen, it's a cover-up on godliness. So it's as if you're giving the concealment of godliness power. It's the opposite. No, verkehrt. The fact that the Eibush made this Christus breed that the nature should continue means he put into it something that's beyond the beyond changes. So the strength of the teva is the revelation of godliness. That's what it comes out, and that's the Christus bris, and that we see from the way we say that pasuk by Rosh Hashanah, the Krisis Bris, that the world should behave according to with the way the Eden, which the Keich Ein Sof. So it's not Shadei made the Teva, the world should continue as a world. The world should continue as a world, a natural world, should have in it the Keich Ein Sof. The Mitvet Leib verstehen was steht in Medrash, and Posach Yorach Hashem Esreich, and this will explain the Medrash. It says Hashem smelled the smell of the Karbonis. Thus, a Gepel the Krisis Bris mit Noach, and in Posach it says that caused that Hashem should make the covenant with Noach. Therefore, it said, "Vayemer Avaya." They just said, "Lo Yosef Elkal the Sodom, I'm not going to curse the land, the earth anymore." So it says in Medrash that this reich and the smell that Hashem smelled is Merames hints reiche shel Avram Avinu Mekif Shneish. Not only the Karbonis from Noach, it smelled the fire, the smell of the fire that comes from the kifshon, the furnace in which Avram Avinu was thrown in for breaking the idols. Reich shechanani mishol v'azari el Mekif Shneish, and the smell of the Hanani, Mishal, Vatzari, which were thrown into the furnace. And they were ready to go on Mesiras Nefesh. That's what Hashem smelled. Re'ach Deirish al Shmad, the smell of the generation of Shmad when you didn't go on Mesiras Nefesh because Goyim wanted first force them to worship the Zohar and to go on Mesiras Nefesh. That smell is what caused Hashem to make a Krisis Bris. The says that the Mesiras Nefesh from Avram Avinu, Hanani, Mishal, Vatzari, and Deirish al Shmad, the Mesiras Nefesh of Avram and Hanani, Mishal, Vatzari, and Deir Shmad, but Aruz from the Vayemer Avaya, that brought out the Vayemer Avaya, I'm not going to curse anymore, I'm not going to bring him out. Fragt him them, says, Akasha asked, was the Reich Nechech von Nechs Karbonis allein genug suft in the Krisis Bris of Kiyelem? Why did Karbonis of Neib not themselves not be sufficient that bring out of the Eibusher should make a Krisis Bris covenant that the world should exist? And what you needed Hashem to make that Krisis Bris, you need Mesiras Nefesh. Bize Mesiras Nefesh from Deirish al Shmad, the Mesiras up to the Mesiras Nefesh of the generation where Yidden gave them lives up for Hashem. But the Darge Achina is Hashem, the highest level of Hashem. Why do you need that? Why does the Medrash say it's the Mesiras Nefesh? Why do you need Mesiras Nefesh? Why can't say they have brought Karbonis to Hashem and Hashem smelled the Karbonis and he promised he will not bring a Babel again? The beer and them is explanations like this. We bald the Krisis Bris atuf geton dem kiyum eilman neifen from Leib Beisu. Since, as we said before, the Krisis Bris made that the world should continue existing, but not stam, continue existing in a form of Leish Beisu, no changes, which means 2 points. That means they should put into the world the Keich Ein Sof, the unlimited Keich of the Eibusher, infinite Keich of the Eibusher was put in, and Yashem Nisi was put into the nature, and their Keich wird misgala dafki durch der Gufe. 2 things: the Eibusher put in the Keich Ein Sof. Where did he put it into? Into the nature. That the nature should continue existing forever. That's what happened by this Krisis Bris. The Rebbe, in order for that to happen, so in order for that to happen, we know Midah Shodamid means Eibishter goes Midah Neged Midah. So the people, there had to be something in the Yidden that they did similar to this, and that's brought about that the Eibishter should make the Krisis Bris, that the Teva should have the Keich Ein Sof. Und das ist der Weide von Mesiras Nefesh. That's the Weide von Mesiras Nefesh. Und befragt die Mesiras Nefesh from Deirish al Shmad, certainly especially the Mesiras Nefesh from the generations who the Goyim wanted them to Shmad. Was Mesiras Nefesh hat in sich deswegen, because Mesiras Nefesh has these 2 points, because it seems like 2 opposite points, as I said before. It's Teva, and Teva became strong, and Teva normally is limited, and became strong, being it got a Keich of unlimited. That's Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh weiß as it is Eved Evedos and Leipen von Leish Nisi. Mesiras Nefesh means that you serve Hashem in a form with no changes. Kein Zach afil the Gresta Lomes kennen nicht stern. Nothing, even the greatest concealments, cannot harm, cannot interrupt, or the afil nor obschwach, not even to weaken the Aveda was a tut mit Mesiras Nefesh the Aveda does. So it's something that's Leish Nisi. So the Mesiras Nefesh, something that you serve Hashem with no changes. Leidach, on the other hand, where they take a Mesiras Nefesh Nizgala durch the Halamas Gufe. What brings out the Mesiras Nefesh? The Helam. What makes the Mesiras Nefesh? The fact that Goyim could come and tell you want to kill you. Not after the Shmad. Shmad doesn't mean them to Shmad to convert. Shmad means the one to destroy them, one to destroy Yiddishkeit. So that brought out brings out Mesiras Nefesh by Yidden. So here Mesiras Nefesh is a strong Aveda that comes as a result of a Helam. What can you do as it's known that the Keich Mesiras Nefesh is made as Managolos, maybe as Manabais. We know that Mesiras Nefesh, the ability of Mesiras Nefesh is stronger in the time of exile, more than the time of the Bisamidish. While the Helam Vehester from Managolos, Ruf Ruis, Because the concealment of godliness, that's in the time of Golos, brings out more the revelation of the Kirch Mesiris Nefesh. So it comes out from this, that hell of a Hester Gufe. So when you talk about Mesiris Nefesh, means there is a hell of a Hester, but that hell of a Hester itself was Bechetzenius is Maneyam Akiv Aved Hashem, but superficially it looks is holding back is serving Hashem. Is Gufe that holding back is serving Hashem? Bring Taruis is Chaskes in Aved Hashem, brings out that you become stronger in serving Hashem. Be so that Aved from Mesiris Nefesh Mailam did the Bagbole told Aved that Mesiris Nefesh higher than any limitations. Nazayid is Gaber of the Manias and Nisyanis is Mesiris Nefesh and Meibish Naid overcomes all these problems, all these tests, and his Mesiris Nefesh gives up his life to Hashem. He said, "The meat Guf and Mavatal the Mahem Heste." That itself destroys the concealment. When a svet nisgale at the kavonde for them nesoyim v'helom hester is given a rusruf man im and a vede shemaylim did magbole. That reveals that what was the real meaning of this helom hester, of this concealment. The purpose was of this nesoyim to bring out that you should come to higher aved l'maylim did magbole. So it comes out here that the Mesiris Nefesh, which is the kayach of a yid of Ein Sof that we have in the yid, reveals, brings out the truth that's there in the Helom Hester, in the Nisyanis. So this is what Mesiris Nefesh did. And that was the cause of the Krisis Bris. Why? Und das ist der Rabbi, für was der Vayisker hat gebracht the Krisis Bris. Was hat gebracht the Krisis Bris, hat gemusst einfach von Elikim. But we understand what the connection between this is and the Krisis Bris. The Krisis Bris, we said, was that it brought in Ein Sof, Bli Gvul, into the Teva, which is Gvul, which came through because of the Mesiris Nefesh of Yidden later on, which is the Keach of Bli Gvul, the Mesiris Nefesh, which is part, and it reveals this is the truth of the Hell of Hester, of the concealment. And this Rebbe says is the reason why it had to come through Shem Elikim Midas Adin Atzmot Gedarf Nefesh when it's Midas Rachim Midas Adin that changed Rachim. The question was, why Taka we didn't need? So the Rebbe asked the Kasha, why do we need that Midas Adin should change Rachman? Why can't Midas Rachman do it? So the Rebbe in Pashtas answered this question before. Because then the Krisis Bris that should never be a Mabel, never possible to be a Mabel, would not be true, because as long as there's existing a Midas Adin, even though it agreed for Rachmim, still makes a possibility for a Mabel. But Al Pechsidus, the Rebbe gives a different reason based on what we just said now. We just said now that the pshat was that we brought out the Gilui Lakus that's in the Helem Hester. So here's like the Rinyan as Teva Guf is bringing to Gilui Lakus, this idea that Teva itself should bring to Gilui Lakus, Ken sich ufta nor durch dem was the Shem Elikim, the mocker of Teva, could only come when Shem Elikim, which is the source of nature, because we know it says in order 40, Elikim is the gematria of the word Teva, HaTeva, but the full name of the Helem Hester Ha'elam. From Shem Elikim is Nishtalsha comes out that there's concealment in the world, that Gilui Nefech Lerachmi, but Sinyoni is Gilui Lakus. When could we show that Teva should bring to Gilui Lakus? Is if the Din changes the Rachmi. Din which is Shem Elikim, and Shem Elikim brings Teva, and Shem Elikim is Din. So when we want to show that there's a Krisis Bris, there was a Krisis Bris, that the Teva itself brings a Lakus, that only comes if Midas Hadin is Napach changes to Midas Rachim. Was the only Gilakus. When the Sibbe, Roshes, Vikris, to them was the Rebishir is Mahapach Midas Hadin, Midas Rachim is, and the cause and the beginning and the main reason why the Rebishir changed Midas Hadin to Midas Rachim is the Gamas Neich Bava Zacharta. As we say in Musav Rosh Hashanah, because you remembered Noach with love. That means as he koren from the Ave Pnimis from Atzmis from the Eibishn to Eden, mitzad etzem eilis neshamas Yisrael. It's the remembering the love, the essential Pnimis dika love the Eibish as Eden mitzad the Meile of Eden. Was it eine Mushlish Pnimis vaspes Esobaruchu? They're mushlish, they're rooted in the etzem of the Eibishter, and by the etzem of the Eibish, Allah mekolini midas klau. Hashem is beyond all these midas, and if it's beyond all these midas, mitzad them vet midas adin nepel rachmim. Midas adin could change rachmim. Like this, din is din and rachmim is rachmim. Change because, but when you reach a shahay madrege, it's beyond the midas, so the limitations of the midas don't count. So then you get a midas adin change rachmim, which is the same idea as teva getting the keich insof. Same idea of Mesiris Nefesh. Und das kommt up the Mata business for but halamas v'steirim of eating Yiddishkeit. This comes down all the way down here. There are all the halamas v'steirim, all the concealments of against Torah mitzvahs of Yidden and Yiddishkeit become bottle. As nit nor ze zayin nit mendeich has v'sholem mitn from the Beit Hashem that these concealments not only don't stop a Yid from serving Hashem, they're other on the contrary is when nepech to Messiah they become helpers. They help from Aruis Yidden. In alles was in dating sich, they help Yidden and everything that Yidden need. In a nation that's bechol bnei Yisrael, Eber meshveisam noch in Eretz Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim megvulim. That it says apostle by Mitzrayim, but Yidden while was Yidden were still Mitzrayim, by the Yidden was there. So it's same thing here. The Eir by the Yidden could be while we're still in Mitzrayim. What do you mean Mitzrayim? We're in Golas, with a concealment, that's called Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim comes in the word Meitzer Gevulma, limitations. And das werde achon krebe zu kim ayud from the Zoyren Brod Seinchem. And this becomes the preparation to the fulfillment of the promise of Hashem that strangers will come and they will be shepherds of our sheep. That means that strangers who are against us will become helping us. The Bias Mashiach, the King of the Maid of Yemin Mamish Mashiach will come very, very soon.